What's going on, everybody? Patriot Stacker here. So I've been going to this coin show every month. They hold it the second Sunday of every month, and it's in my area. It's about an hour from where I live, but I've been trying to go there every month if I can. And I ended up going this past weekend, and I picked up some really interesting new pieces. I got some silver, I got some old coins, but I also picked up something that I don't normally purchase. I picked up some old paper currency, some really interesting and extremely historical banknotes. So that's what I'm showing off today in today's video. I hope you enjoy checking out my newest acquisitions. Stay tuned. So here is all of the paper currency and banknotes that I picked up from the coin show. I was actually really excited to pick these up because I think they have beautiful designs and they have a lot of history. So first off, this note here is the oldest note that I picked up. This is issued by El Estado de Chihuahua, which is the state of Chihuahua in Mexico. And it was issued in 1915. So from 1910 through 1920, that was the time of the Mexican Revolution. So a lot of history in this banknote here, a very historical time for Mexico. And like I said, that was during the Mexican Revolution. And this was from 1915. And this is just a beautiful piece of paper currency. It is 5 pesos, 5 pesos. Has some signatures at the bottom here. Just a really beautiful looking piece. And the reverse of the note is just gorgeous, very ornate design. And we have the Mexican eagle. Just a really beautiful piece. It's not in the best condition here. It has quite a few creases and heavily circulated. But I thought this was really cool. Of course, I'm a big fan of Mexican silver and gold. And I collect a lot of the Mexican coinage. And I figured, I saw this, and a lot of this paper currency, there was a gentleman at the coin show selling this, and it was fairly inexpensive. So I decided to just pick up a handful because I thought they were really interesting. So first off, we had the 5 pesos from Chihuahua, Mexico from 1915 during the Mexican Revolution. Really beautiful piece. I also picked up some other Mexican notes, but we'll get to those in just a moment. I want to talk about all of these notes here. You see, we have a few different denominations. We have 1 peso, 5 pesos, 10 pesos, and 100 pesos. And these are all issued by the Japanese government. And this was during the time of the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. These were all issued for the Philippines. So it's a really interesting piece of history. Only 10 hours after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Japan invaded the Philippines, which was then occupied by the U.S., and they forced the U.S. to withdraw. And the Japanese occupied the Philippines from 1941 through 1943. So for 3 years, they occupied the Philippines, and they issued their own banknotes for the Philippines during that occupation. So all these notes here were issued by the Japanese government, as you clearly see there on the note. So I picked up a handful of each denomination because I just thought they were so interesting. I mean, they're really beautiful pieces of currency, very historical and just like a classic look. So here we have the 1 peso, kind of a plain design here, but you notice there's this blank circle. And let me see if I can grab a flashlight and show you that's actually a security feature. So if you hold up a flashlight, I don't know if the camera's gonna, there it is. It shows a banana tree, which is kind of cool. There is a security feature, a little hidden banana tree in that circle. So I thought that was really interesting. Of course, you can see it a little bit better when you hold it up behind the note. So really cool. You know, I didn't know that until I did a little bit more research on these notes. I'm like, that is a little interesting why it's so plain right here. But that is actually a security feature. And that's featured on all of these Japanese issued pesos. So I have 3 here of the 1 peso. And as you see, they look extremely similar in design, the font, and everything to the US banknotes at the time. So I thought that was very interesting as well. I picked up 2 of the 5 pesos. And most of these were issued in 1942, 1943, I believe. And here we have the security feature is also featured right here. So kind of a nice, ornate, just a very classic look to these notes. And this was all during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. And another interesting fact, so during that occupation, there were many guerrilla forces in the Philippines that were rebelling against the Japanese. And the guerrilla forces also introduced their own emergency banknotes. And that was more of a fiat currency because it wasn't backed by any government. It was just this guerrilla force and these rebels that actually issued their own currency, which of course is not as ornate or as beautiful looking as some of these notes. It was more like if you've ever seen an old Civil War note or Confederate notes from the US. There's no reverse to it, just a blank kind of piece of paper with some lettering on the front, on the obverse of the note. Really interesting. So, I'll throw up a little picture here to show you of the guerrilla emergency banknotes that they had, a fiat note, not actually backed by any government. So at that time, they issued those emergency notes, and if you didn't accept those emergency notes, and you only would accept these Japanese notes, they would actually, rebel against you and sometimes even try to fight or hurt or harm that person who wouldn't use the guerrilla emergency notes. Really historical, really interesting history behind all of this occupation of the Philippines. So another funny or interesting piece of history that a lot of those rebelling locals and natives of the Philippines that didn't want to use this Japanese currency, they actually called this Mickey Mouse money. That was their name for these notes here. So another kind of interesting little side note there. So I also picked up some of these 10 pesos. Really kind of a cool design. Of course, a darker history for the Philippines, very historical. So here we have the 100 pesos, and I thought these were really cool, especially because they're a higher denomination. So I picked up 3 of these, and this one is really interesting here. It has some writing on there, but we'll get to that in just a moment. I'll show you here. Those 2 are blank, and they also have the security features like we mentioned on all the other notes. But take a look at this here. Let's see if I can get this to show on the camera. So it says here, given by Sergeant Jose S. Cernande, F Company, 66th, it's hard to read there, 2nd Battalion, D Company, 1st Battalion, 136th Regiment, 33rd District or Division, San Nicolas, Pangasinan, Philippines. I'm not sure if I pronounced any of that correctly, but how interesting and how cool is that? This was written on by a Filipino soldier at the time of World War II during this Japanese occupation. This is a really interesting piece here. So I just thought that was so cool and so interesting. And I mean, the history is just crazy with all of these notes here. So very, very cool pickups. I was excited to get these and add this to my very small currency collection that I have. So that brings us to this note here. This is a Philippines 1 peso, And this is a victory note, series number 66. And this was a very historical note as well. So after the occupation by Japan, now the U.S. took back the Philippines and they began to print these Philippine pesos, which were very similar notes to what they had pre-Japanese occupation. And I like how it says here, payable to the bearer on demand in silver pesos or in legal tender currency of the United States of equivalent value. So very interesting. And I like this side here, the reverse of this note with the big victory written there. Really, really beautiful. So this was now regained occupation by the United States. And then, as you might know, just a few years later, in 1946, on July 4th, the Philippines gained their independence. So very historical, really very interesting note here. I was excited to add this to my collection. And here we have this figure, Mabini, and it says series number 66. That's actually the age in which he passed away. So he was 66. Kind of an interesting little fact there. That's why they say series 66. So really, really interesting piece of historical currency here. So we have quite a few of these Philippines notes. Japanese occupied, U.S. occupied, and like I mentioned earlier, in between there were some guerrilla force emergency fiat notes that were issued. Just a lot of history with the Philippines. So very, very cool to add these to my paper currency collection. And lastly, I got 3 of these Mexican notes, which I just love these. They are such a cool design. So I have 3 different ones here. 2 of these are just beautifully uncirculated. This one's got a little stain on there, but they are crisp and just beautiful. This one is pretty circulated, but this is actually a very rare series of these Mexican peso notes. This is a Series A. And basically, the lower the series you have, the more rare it is. So this A series is ultra rare. And then you see here, we also have a Series K. So that is, still a little bit rare. And then this one having 2 letters, Series CK, is just not as rare as these. But I love the design. So this one is, like I said, very circulated. This one has a little stain on it. But let's take a look at this one that is just in perfect condition. So these are beautiful. They have the Aztec calendar stone right here on the obverse, which is, just such an intricate and beautiful design. We see these on a lot of coins, as well as some more modern silver rounds, like the Golden State Mint Aztec calendar, which is a design we all love. And I think that is just amazing. So this is 1 peso, an un peso, and the beautiful design here, which you might recognize this statue, because that is what we see on our Libertads, the statue of the Winged Victory. Just amazing. I love these notes. I just think they're so intricate. And look at these designs. These are like security features. Such crazy, just intricate little pieces of art, Really, really cool. So these were issued the 50s through the 70s, and then they would reevaluate their currency, and there's a lot of history with Mexican currency and coinage. But I was really excited to pick up some more of these. I actually have a handful of these in my collection already. So we ended up getting some really cool Mexican notes, some Filipino U.S. occupied victory notes, some really interesting historical Japanese occupied Philippine notes, especially this one here with the handwritten note by a Filipino soldier. So that was really amazing. And then, of course, we also got this old Mexican Revolution 1915 5 pesos from the Estado de Chihuahua, Mexico. really, really cool stuff here. So I hope you enjoyed checking out all of these banknotes that I picked up. I mean, they have so much history. I could go on and on about the history behind all of these, whether it's the Mexican Revolution or just the Mexican currency reevaluations, and also the Filipino history, which is just very, very historical and just very intriguing. So I hope you enjoyed checking out all my currency notes that I got from the coin show. And please, if you enjoyed today's video, smash that like button if you enjoyed what you saw. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy videos all about silver stacking, coin collecting, precious metals, treasure hunting, and much more. And ring the notification bell so you can see when I upload my next video. And as always, have a great day.